Welcome back to the Red Dice Diaries. I'm John and this is Hannah.
Hi.
And all this month we're going to be looking at the various prompts for RPGaDay 2025. So let's get into it.
So the prompt for day one is Patron.
Yep.
What's that bring to mind for you, John?
Okay, so for me, when you say patron, it makes me think of the stereotypical sort of quest giver in a D&D game. You know, whether that's a stranger in a sort of darkened tavern who's hiring you for sort of mercenary interests, or it's an NPC that you've become friendly with, who, for all intents and purposes, and it's all dressed up in different ways in RPGs, but essentially they say to the player characters, I've got X job that needs doing, and in return you will get Y benefit. Whether it's, I need you to stop these orcs attacking these village and I'll pay you loads of gold, to, I need you to safeguard my nephew to such and such a place, and in return you get a position at court, or something like that. And I think for me the sort of benefits of a patron, it makes it very clear what your task is. And I'm finding this in the sort of Enemy Within at the minute. At some points in the sort of books that I'm running this campaign from, and it's a very famous sort of campaign, the goal isn't always 100% clear. So there's been a few bits where I've had to sort of make it a bit more obvious, because I thought, well, if I was a player here, I wouldn't really be sure what I'm supposed to be doing. And if you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, and you've not portrayed that to the players as the GM, you can't then really complain if they're not doing that or they're going off in other ways. And at some point, that's absolutely fine. Like if you're running like an open sort of world game, like a hex crawl, and the idea is the players just do whatever they want, that's absolutely great. Whereas if you're running a slightly more linear campaign, like say like the Enemy Within for Wolfrup, you kind of need people to know what they're heading towards.
Cool. So to take it sort of away from D&D for a moment, or away from fantasy for a moment, this is also the role that, like, the captain on a Star Trek starship holds.
Yeah.
Or the admiral, if you've got a player playing the captain.
Very much, yeah.
It's the role that your sire holds in a vampire game, usually.
Yeah.
Or maybe the pack leader in a werewolf game. I'm looking at your lists, and I think Cthulhu would be the one where I'd be most likely to expect to encounter that sort of a character.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about that, 'cause I mean, well, I suppose it depends on how you think of like the sort of patron or the quest giver. Because most often when I've played sort of Cthulhu games of various different types, you tend to more sort of, you stumble into a situation that's going on. And I play far more Tremulous than I play Call of Cthulhu. But you sort of, in that game, you tend to like stumble into the small American town with something going on, or you're on an expedition to the Arctic where something occurs. And I think it's less of a person saying you've got this job, it's more the situation.
Yeah, I mean, this may actually be because I do tend to play the detective type characters in Cthulhu games, you need someone to hire the detective.
Yeah, I think that's a very important distinction as well, because I mean, as well as having NPC patrons, you can sort of almost have PC quest givers as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've done that thing, like you say, in a game where I'm that sort of guy. If I play a Cthulhu game, you know, we often joke about in real life, like, 'cause we watch a lot of horror films. If we were in a horror film, we'd be rubbish, because I'd be like, you best believe I'm not going down that dark cellar. I don't care what's going on.
I'd still buy the murder house if it was cheap enough.
But in a Cthulhu game, I'm the exact opposite, because I'm like, well, I've pulled up to a game where I know the tropes of like the sort of Cthulhu-esque stories and the mythos-style stories, so I'll buy into that 100%. I'll be the guy who's like, oh yeah, I'll go outside and have a look what that strange noise was in the mist. Oh yeah, what was the worst that could happen? So I think as a PC doing that, you can sort of push the story along, even if you're not strictly a patron.
I suppose another element to it, why I've not encountered these sort of characters as much as yourself, aside from the fact that you roleplay a lot more than I do, I mostly do shorter games where the characters get genned up in session 0 and then the GM comes up with storylines about the stuff that the characters came up with in session 0. So unless we wrote a patron in when we were doing the first session, there's not going to be one.
Yeah, and again, it's another sort of important distinction, because we all sort of appreciate as players, if you're playing a one-shot or a two-shot or whatever, a small form game, then things have to be abbreviated for the sake of time. Because if you've got one session, you've got maybe, 4 or 5 hours, and I'm talking generally here, then you sort of expect the fact that you'll come out of the gates running. And a large part of that is, it might be like, oh, you've been hired by this organisation to go and do this, and the rest of the session is you doing whatever goal the patron has set. Whereas in a sort of more long-running campaign, it's often a little bit more difficult for the GM to sort of seamlessly link a sort of patron in. Because it feels a bit jarring if, like, let's say the stereotypical, you're in a tavern, some guy just pulls up to you and he's like, oh, you guys are like, look like you're a bit tasty with a sword. I've got a job for you, like, lay some money down on the deck and off you go. It's a little bit less jarring if you've got NPCs who've already been established, that you can then sort of, like, they've got a reason to trust the player characters. So they can then sort of reach out to them. And this is something I've been trying to do in my Wolfrop campaigns at the minute. So like the NPCs the player characters are interacting with, and they've sort of tangentially been involved with them in parts of their other plots. Those NPCs will then reach out to them later and they'll be like, oh, I remember you handled such and such quite well. Oh, I've got a bit of a delicate matter that I can now do a hand in, and maybe I can help you out with some of the other stuff you're working on in return. And when you sort of get it down to the bare bones, it's the same thing as an NPC going, I want you to do this job and I'll give you this in return. But it just feels a little bit less jarring, even though we all sort of know what it is as players and GMs, and we accept it as sort of part of the form of like RPGs.
Another way this sort of character might work would be as like the king, and the player characters are his soldiers who become his knights, who become his trusted royal guard. Sort of in the style of the Three Musketeers.
Oh, yeah.
And it's also sort of makes me think about like ancient Greek, ancient Irish stories where there's the hero that's been prophesized to kill the king, so the king sends them off on all these missions that are expected to kill them off. It's that sort of a character as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I think part of the idea of RPGaDay is to like say something positive about each of the prompts. You know, I think it's a very good thing they're trying to do to get people to talk positively about it, because it's very easy to be quite down on yourself and be quite negative about things within the sort of hobby space. And I think for me, although it can be there can be a few difficulties with getting a patron in, specifically in a long campaign like we're saying. I think one of the benefits is, as we've said earlier, it very concretely says to the players, if you do this particular job, this is the benefit you are going to get out of it. There's no ambiguity, and it sort of, it then, I mean, it doesn't force the player characters to do it. It just basically says to them, here's an opportunity. If you want this reward, whatever that might be, gold, a position at court, a fabulous mansion house, whatever, if you want that, do this, and you'll get it. And there's very little ambiguity to it. And then it's entirely on the heads of the players to say, yeah, we're going to go and do that. And they might succeed, they might fail, they might partially succeed, they might choose to negotiate, see if they can get more stuff if they think it's more dangerous, get more reward. But it leads to an opportunity for roleplay with the patron, while still having that sort of black and white, here's what you're going to get for doing this particular quest. And I think that's quite a positive to me, because there's a lot of other stuff going on in RPGs that, you know, during the course of the quest that you have to keep in your mind. And if it's ambiguous what you're going to get out of it or what you're supposed to be doing, it's quite easy to become sort of lost in that and sort of almost lose that during the campaign session. And halfway through, you're like, why were we attacking this guy's castle again? Like, what was it we were trying to steal out of the cellar of this ancient ruin? And that can then cause the game to grind to a halt. Whereas if you can have the players go like, oh yeah, it was Lord Farquaad who hired us to like steal the ancient barrel of dwarven ale from the ruins. You've got it there. It's no nonsense, and all the player characters can be working towards the same thing. And let's face it, it's a group hobby where, in most cases, certainly in like the older school games that I play, it is sort of quite mission based. Whether that mission's just like, right, we're going to see how far we can get into that dungeon, or we're going to raid this ancient castle to try and see what treasures we can get out of it. So I think sort of setting the expectations early just takes a little bit of the weight off the memory weight, if you want, off the player character's shoulders. So that's it from me and Hannah for this RPGaDay 2025 episode.
Bye.
Hopefully you'll join us in the next one. And until we see you again, take care, stay safe, and whenever you're playing, have fun.